The Firefly's Bargain. On a moonless night in a small Bambara village in Mali, little Bintou stepped quietly past the mud walls of her family's hut. The village was asleep. Only crickets and distant drumbeats of a faraway ceremony broke the silence. Bintou's heart pounded with both fear and determination. In her hand, she clutched a woven basket. Tonight, she was breaking the rules, all for her beloved grandmother. Just hours ago, Bintou's grandmother lay feverish, whispering about a rare night-blooming flower that could cure her illness. No one else believed the old legend, but Bintou did. She had decided to find that flower herself. And so, on this starless night, the 8-year-old girl gathered her courage and crept toward the looming forest where the cure was said to grow. As Bintou stepped under the canopy of ancient baobab trees, the darkness was thick like ink. She could barely see the narrow footpath ahead. Every rustle of leaves and chirp of a nocturnal insect made her flinch. After a few minutes, her breathing grew unsteady. The forest seemed endless and disorienting. She paused, fighting back tears of doubt. How will I ever find anything in this darkness? She thought. Suddenly, a tiny pinprick of light appeared, dancing a few paces ahead. Bintou blinked. At first, she thought her eyes were tricking her, but no, it was real. The light bobbed closer, revealing itself to be a small firefly glowing brilliantly in the dark. Relieved to see any light, Bintou gently reached out her hand. To her astonishment, the firefly darted forward and hovered right before her face, as if inspecting this human child. "Well," the firefly said in a tiny tinkling voice, "why are you in the forest alone, little one?" Bintou gasped. A talking insect. But in this magical night, she mustered her nerve to reply, I need to find the midnight flower. My Ngogo is very sick," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They say the flower's petals can heal any fever." Bintou's eyes brimmed with tears as she spoke. The firefly darted around her head thoughtfully, its light casting a soft glow on her anxious face. This was no ordinary insect. Perhaps an ancient forest spirit in disguise, Bintou wondered. The firefly had indeed lived long in this forest and knew its secrets. "The midnight flower," the firefly buzzed. "I know of it, a rare blossom that shines as bright as the moon." The firefly's tiny voice grew warm. "I can lead you to it." Bintou's hope flared as she asked, "Really?" But she remembered folktales of trickster spirits. "Why would you help me?" The little creature's golden glow flickered as he replied, "Because I too want something. I have a bargain to make." Bintou tilted her head curiously. "A bargain?" The firefly explained that all its life it had dreamed of showing the worth of small creatures like itself. "No one notices a single firefly," it lamented. "But if I can do a great deed tonight, maybe your people will finally see how important even the smallest light can be." In return for guiding her, it wanted Bintou's promise that she would tell her village of what the firefly did and ensure the fireflies of the forest would always be respected and safe. Bintou's face softened into a smile. It was a fair bargain, a heartfelt one. "I promise," Bintou said solemnly, placing a free hand over her little chest. "If you help me save my grandmother, I will tell everyone how a firefly's light saved a life. I'll make sure no child ever traps a firefly in a jar again." At that, The firefly spiraled upward in a joyful loop. The bargain was struck. The firefly zoomed ahead and Bintou followed its beacon-like glow. Together they ventured deeper into the forest than Bintou had ever gone. Gnarled tree roots jutted from the ground, but the firefly's light guided her small feet to step carefully over each obstacle. They crossed a shallow creek where the water was black under the sky. Bintou hesitated at the water's edge. The stones looked slippery. The firefly darted across first, illuminating each stepping stone with its glow. Bintou crossed slowly, arms out for balance, until she safely reached the other side. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Onward they went. At one point, a pair of gleaming eyes peered at them from a hollow log. A wild genet, watching their passage. Bintou froze, but the firefly bravely flew toward the eyes, its glow growing larger and brighter. Startled by the sudden light, the animal blinked and slunk away into the bushes. Bintou giggled softly in relief and wonder. The firefly had seemed to grow brighter at will to protect her. Keep up, the night won't last forever," the firefly playfully chimed, leading onward. They trudged up a small hill where the canopy opened above. There, the sky was clear and full of stars, sparkling like a million distant fireflies. Bintou realized how far from home she was. The village's lights were nowhere in sight, yet she felt no fear now because she had a companion, a tiny but steady friend. As the hour grew late, the forest around them changed. The firefly slowed its flight. "We're close," it whispered. Bintou's eyes adjusted to see that they stood in a grove of tall, winding trees she'd never seen before. Their branches were draped in hanging moss that gently swayed. And then she saw it, a faint silver luminescence among the roots of one tree. Bintou approached and parted the leaves. There it was, a single flower glowing with soft white light, like a drop of moonlight fallen to earth. Its petals formed a star shape. A sweet, calming fragrance wafted from it. Bintou, in an ringing, excited whisper, said, "The midnight flower." She knelt and carefully plucked the bloom, placing it in her basket as reverently as one would pick up a newborn chick. As she did, the firefly's light mingled with the flower's glow, and for a moment, the whole grove lit up in a gentle radiance. Tiny night moths fluttered away, and a distant owl hooted as if in approval. Bintou felt a surge of gratitude. She turned to the firefly, who drifted in lazy circles around her head, clearly pleased. "Thank you, truly," she said. "Now, grandmother will get well." The firefly dimmed its light slightly, as if blushing at the thanks. But their journey was not over. They still had to return safely with the precious flower. Clutching the basket, Bintou followed her guide back through the woods. But the night had worn on, and a foggy mist began to gather between the trees, making everything look different. At the creek crossing, Bintou slipped, just a little, and some water splashed into the firefly. Its wings wet, the firefly faltered in the air, its glow flickering weakly. "Oh no, are you all right?" Bintou said, growing concerned. The firefly's voice was tiny and strained. "My light is fading, the mist, I can't." It had guided her all this way, but now the firefly itself was in trouble. Its shimmer barely a spark. Bintou's promise echoed in her mind. The smallest light can be important. Without thinking twice, she took the flower from a basket. Its white glow was soft, but enough to see. Holding the glowing blossom aloft, Bintou said, "Hold onto my shoulder. I'll guide you now." The little firefly clung to the collar of her tunic. Though she was just a child, Bintou now walked with confidence, lighting the path with the flower in hand. In that moment, the roles reversed. The helper became the one in need, and the child who needed help became the protector. They pressed forward, but the way down the hill was confusing in the fog. Bintou's heart began to pound. What if they were truly lost? She refused to panic. Looking at the shivering firefly, she spoke softly. "You'll be okay? We'll be home soon." She didn't know if it understood, but the firefly nestled closer, as if comforted by her voice.
Ayo, 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 Bintou, Bintou. Ayo, 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 Bintou. 8 years old, Bintou, Bintou. Went on a dangerous journey, Bintou, Bintou. She's got a magical firefly, Bintou, Bintou. And she's gotta make it home on time, Bintou, Bintou. Ayo, 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 Bintou, Bintou. 8 years old, Bintou, Bintou. Went on a dangerous journey, Bintou, Bintou. She's got a magical firefly, Bintou, Bintou. And she's gotta make it home on time, Bintou, Bintou. Ayo, 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 Bintou, Bintou. Ayo, 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 Bintou, Bintou.
Then Bintou remembered something her grandmother told her. "If ever you are lost, look to the stars. Your ancestors will guide you." But above, the stars were now hidden by mist, except in one spot. Through a small break in the haze, a single bright star twinkled. Bintou felt a swell of hope. "Fireflies of the forest, please help us." Bintou cried into the night, unsure if any other fireflies could hear. For a moment, there was only the sound of her echo and a gentle breeze ruffling the trees. Then, one by one, tiny lights appeared in the darkness around her. First 2, then 5, then dozens. Fireflies. The air filled with little lanterns as the other fireflies answered Bintou's call. They recognized their fading friend and the kind human girl. In a dazzling display, the fireflies gathered around Bintou like a living constellation. Together, those swarm of fireflies illuminated a clear path through the last stretch of forest. Bintou laughed in amazement, turning in a slow circle to take in the magic. It was as if the stars themselves had come down to escort her home. The firefly on her shoulder managed a faint glow in gratitude, inspired by its companions. Guided by 100 twinkling guides, Bintou finally saw the familiar outline of her village's granary and the palisade fence. She was home! As she stepped out of the forest, the first hint of dawn was coloring the east with a deep blue. The swarm of fireflies gently dispersed, each returning to the forest with the coming morning. Only Bintou's firefly friend remained, still perched on her shoulder. Bintou rushed into her hut, startling her parents who had just awoken and discovered her missing. In a flurry of tears and joy, she showed them the glowing midnight flower. Grandmother drank a potion brewed from its petals just as the sun's rim crept over the horizon. By the time full daylight bathed the village, the fever had broken. Grandmother awoke, smiling weakly but surely at her granddaughter's bold success. When the excitement calmed, Bintou stepped outside, the exhausted Firefly still resting in her cupped hands. In the light of day, each was a small, unassuming bug. One might not guess the heroic role it played at night. Bintou's eyes welled up, grateful, and softly said to Firefly, "Thank you. I will never forget what you did." She remembered her promise, though the Firefly was too weak to fly just yet. Bintou carefully placed it on the broad leaf of a calabash plant by the doorway. It could recover in peace and fly home when ready. But Bintou wasn't done fulfilling her bargain. That very morning, she gathered the village children and even a few adults and recounted the entire adventure, how a brave Firefly guided her in the darkness and how the Fireflies united to bring her home. The other children listened with mouths agape. The adults exchanged humbled glances. True to her word, Bintou made sure everyone knew the value of the Fireflies. From that day on, no one in the village would dare harm a Firefly or call it just a pest. In fact, at Grandmother's suggestion, they began to plant marigolds and white jasmine flowers around their homes because those flowers attracted fireflies. Bintou herself planted a ring of them around her grandmother's window. A week later, under a full moon, the village looked like a scene from a dream. The sweet scent of jasmine filled the warm evening air. Dozens upon dozens of fireflies flitted around the huts and gardens, their little lights dancing that night under the Malian sky filled with real stars and living stars. Everyone learned that no light is too small to shine, and no act of kindness is ever wasted.
Bintou. 8 years old, 8 years old, Bintou. Bintou. Went on a dangerous journey. Bintou. Bintou. She's got a magical firefly. Bintou. Bintou. And she's gotta make it home on time. Bintou. Bintou.